Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this masterclass, which is the second of a three-part series called Your High-Performing Self-Image. If you were not able to join part one, no worries. You can review the recording afterwards. Part three of this series is scheduled for next Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so I hope you can join us. I'm Tian Wong, founder and host of the Big Idea CONNECTpreneur community. We are a global community of over 25,000 investors, founders, and business leaders from around the world. I'm also CEO of Opus 8, which helps companies and alternative investment managers raise money through our network of over 3,000 accredited private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the United States. As mentioned, this is part two of a three-part series. And again, if you were not able to join part one, we will include the recording afterwards. And again, part three is next Friday, so hopefully you guys can join us. Today's masterclass is scheduled for 60 minutes. We'll include plenty of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions for our instructor, please type them directly into the group chat, or you can private chat with our co-host and CONNECTpreneur community manager, Skylar, or you can just raise your hand after we start Q&A and ask the question yourself. We're really blessed to have Stephanie Hessler as our instructor today. I've known Steph for over 40 years. I know she doesn't look it, but we met in college. She's a dear family friend, and she's also one of the leading executive coaches in the country. She's also my personal coach. So Steph is a graduate of Wellesley College and has an MBA from the Wharton School. She's worked on Wall Street and in the financial services industry. She speaks regularly to various C-level groups, including alumni groups from Harvard Business School, Wharton, and now CONNECTpreneur community. So before we get started with Steph, I'd like to turn things over to Skylar, who's our community manager and co-host. Sky.
Perfect. Thanks, Tian. We're going to start out today with two polls that Stephanie has created for the class. So I will launch the first one now, and these will be confidential. We'll show the results, but you won't see who chose what. So feel free to answer this poll. I'll give it about 30 seconds or so. Okay, perfect. About 5 more seconds. I still see a couple results coming in. Okay, we'll end this one and I'll share the results so we can see, and Stephanie can see as well. As you can see, most people, and I guess the majority was no, but then second coming in at yes, and then, or the majority is not sure, second is yes, and then the last is no. And we have one more poll, which I will launch now and give it about 30 seconds as well. Okay, a few more answers coming in. Give it about 5 more seconds. Okay, perfect. I'll end this poll and share the results. So majority for this one answered yes, and then no, and then not sure after that. So thank you everyone for participating in those. As Tian mentioned, if you have any questions during the class, feel free to write them in the chat, or you can wait and unmute yourself after to ask during the Q&A portion, or you can also private message me your question, whichever you're comfortable with. And with that, I will turn the time over to Stephanie to conduct the class.
Thank you so much, Sky and Tian. Thank you so much for hosting me, for the wonderful introduction, Sky, for running the poll. We'll get back to the poll results a little bit later, but it's really interesting to have those poll results. And I want to express my gratitude also to all of you who are here, especially if you come back for the second time, and also welcoming those who are here for the first time. And as Tian mentioned, if you're here for the first time, I encourage you to go back and watch the first session, because the sessions really build up upon themselves. And Tien, thank you so much for the introduction. So as you know, the 3-part masterclass is what we're involved in. We're here for our second part. So last week we went into depth about what exactly is self-image. And today we're going to do a little review of what self-image is, but we're going to be diving into your self-image script. And then next week will be our final week where we're going to pull it all together, because the bottom line is that this is for you to be able to use in your life. You know, I want you to hear this information, of course, intellectually pick it up. But the most important thing, the value, is when you actually use it, when you give it practical application every day in your life. That's how your results will improve. So we'll be diving into that next week. Next week on April 1st. I also want to be sure that everybody's got the workbook, because the workbook is an important part of this. I've also opened up 5 self-image consultations to the first 5 people who want one, who email me. And Sky's typing my email into the chat. So for those of you who want to jump on that opportunity, go ahead and email me. So I am the star of my life. And that was the poll question last week. Are you the star of your life, or are you playing a supporting role? And what I want for you, if you already feel like you're the star of your life, to feel even more so that way, and why it's so important. And absolutely, if you've been feeling like you're playing a supportive role, that this is really about helping you to truly be the star of your life. And there is nothing arrogant about that. All of us have so many talents and abilities, reservoirs of potential deep inside of us. And when we really step into owning who we are, you can truly show up as the star of your life and touch your family, your work, your community, and the world in much more impactful ways when you truly are the star of your life. So over the next few minutes that we have together, I'll be talking for about 30 minutes today. You're going to be gaining some new insights, adding on to what we had last week. And you know, it's really important for you to continue to understand that your next level of success starts with your up-leveled self-image and that inner self-image. And remember that self-image is inside of you, and your success starts inside of you. We have this misconception that success happens outside of us, and you see the results outside of you. You experience the results, right? But it starts inside of you with your thinking, with your beliefs, and a self-image is a key and foundational part of that. So just like last week, I want to encourage you to really bring your focused attention. Even though this is a 3-part series, it's still a brief amount of time in terms of the depth of this. And I emphasized last week how very, very foundational this concept is in personal growth and in your own achievement and living the most fulfilling, successful life that you possibly can for yourself. So bring your focused attention, listen, go back and re-listen. You heard me say last week that a key quality of learning these concepts of personal growth is study. So go back, listen as well, re-listen, and then apply them to yourselves. And that's where the workbook is absolutely vital, because the workbook is where you're going to take what we're learning together here intellectually and really apply it to yourself in your life, where you're going to experience it internally. And that's where your transformation happens. So absolutely be sure that you're working the workbook, so to speak. And for today, so today specifically this is what we're covering. This is our agenda. So I'm going to do a review, just like we did last week, of what is self-image. I'm going to do an abbreviated review of what exactly self-image is. And then we're going to go into that concept of helping you to develop your up-leveled self-image. And it starts with the idea of looking at your life as a movie. And we simply look at your life as a movie in order to give you a structure, a format, so to speak, in order to work around self-image. And then the last part is to get you started on working on your self-image script, and we'll continue with that. That will be our final session next week. The self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. Same quote that I shared last week. That's from Maxwell Maltz, who was a medical doctor, and he was a pioneering figure in the science and psychology of self-image. And as I mentioned last week, he wrote the book Cybernetics, which was published in the 1960s. And in my opinion, I've studied this book many times in depth. It is like an owner's manual for the mind. And if you think about it, your mind is the most important part of you that hardly anybody teaches you about. Because your result, how you experience life, how you experience the world, is a direct reflection of what's going on in your mind, and most specifically in your subconscious mind. And your self-image, that inner self-image, is part of your paradigm, part of your subconscious mental programming. So let's do that abbreviated review again of self-image. What exactly do we mean by self-image? So you'll recall that in Cybernetics, Dr. Maltz talks about two images. You have your outer self-image and you have an inner self-image. And what we're focused on here in this masterclass is your inner self-image. Dr. Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and what he found in his decades of working with patients in his practice was that after he performed, reconstructive surgery to correct a deformity, to correct somebody's physical appearance, to improve their appearance, he found that some people went on and their lives were transformed. Their confidence rose and they went on to have amazing new lives. But he found there was another group of people where their appearance absolutely improved, but their lives didn't improve. Their lives didn't change. And that led him to postulate that we have these two images, right? So one is the outer image, and that's how we show up in the world, how we talk, greet, and meet other people, shake hands, walk, all that kind of stuff. But the one that we're really focused on, which absolutely influences the outer self-image, is your inner self-image. And that starts deep inside of you in your subconscious mind. So the self-image, what it is, it's a mental blueprint. It's a picture that you have of yourself, and it's part of your subconscious paradigm. Now, your paradigm is your mental programming. And that means it's multitudes of habits, of beliefs, of fixed ideas, of memories that are deep in your subconscious mind. Some of this you inherit, genetically. But most of your self-image, most of your paradigm, and by the way, self-image is part of that paradigm, part of your mental programming. It's formed from things and experiences that you pick up in your environment. So mostly environmental, formed by past experiences. And the thing about self-image, it is so deep in every one of us that until you learn about it, maybe for some of you, this is the first time you're learning about it. Okay. And by the way, I'd love to see in the chat, type a 1 if this is the first time you've been hearing about, or last week or 2 weeks ago was the first time you'd really learned about this concept, self-image. Type a 1 in if this is the first time that you're learning really in this level of depth about. Oh, good. So I'm seeing quite a few ones. It was the same thing for me. You heard me say, even though I thought I was a very well-educated person, I had never heard of this before, right? And so what happens is that because we aren't familiar with it, because we don't learn about it, and it's not that people don't want to teach us. It's not that our parents don't want to teach us, or our teachers, or our therapists, or our ministers. It's that they don't know. They just don't know. And so what happens is when you don't know, you never stop to question its truthfulness. You never stop to question the validity of your self-image. But that self-image, because it's part of your subconscious mental programming, is so strong that you act upon it as if it's true, because you don't know any other way to act. And in fact, just saying, oh, I'm going to change is not enough. Willpower alone can't change it. It truly is an inside job. You've got to go inside of yourself. And that's, I hope that you'll all be able to take that away, especially from the workbook, that it really is an inside job to reflect on your current self-image in order to then consciously up-level it. So remember also from last week that your self-image operates very much like a cybernetic mechanism. So what's a cybernetic mechanism? Well, like this airplane here, okay? A cybernetic equipment is equipment that has a goal. It must have a goal, a target or a goal in order to function. And it's oriented to end results. So you might remember 2 weeks ago, I mentioned I was flying to San Diego. So an airplane that's flying to San Diego has an autopilot system. That's a cybernetic system. And that cybernetic system will keep it on course to San Diego. Okay. And if turbulence comes along or if it gets off course, what that cybernetic system does is it brings it right back on course. So it's like a off course, back on course, off course, back on course, because that autopilot, that cybernetic system has it oriented towards that end target. And we're not saying here that your mind is like a piece of equipment. What we're saying is that your mind has that same quality of being goal-oriented. It must have a target. That's just the way your mind is designed. And that's really important for all of you to know, because that means that you want to consciously give it a target. So again, your self-image, it's a mental blueprint, a picture of yourself that's deep in your subconscious mind. And it's like a control mechanism. And the target for your mind, right, for you is that goal image. And that primary goal image is your self-image. Okay, your self-image that is deep in your subconscious mind. So that's why for so many people wondering, like, why am I getting the results that I want when I know I can be doing so much better? Because if you're not consciously up-leveling your self-image, unconsciously, your internal control mechanism, so to speak, will just default to whatever your current self-image is. And, if you think about how that current self-image was formed, that you picked up all this stuff, some of which is just wrong information, right? We pick up just so many beliefs about ourselves that simply aren't true. And one of the questions that I had for you in session 1 was to reflect back on yourself, what your current results are telling you about your self-image. And I can see here from the poll questions that 46% weren't sure. Okay, so that also tells me that I want to be sure that we're really understanding these concepts. Okay, that we're really, really understanding these concepts and doing that self-reflection, looking at your results in order to be able to look at your current self-image and what that's telling you about what's holding you back. Okay, so since your mind operates like a control mechanism that is oriented towards a goal, and that goal image is your self-image. In order for you to reach your vision, right? I asked you to do that exercise of your vision. I was so glad to see that 51% of you said it was easy to do that exercise. So I'm really glad to see that. And for those of you who didn't find it that easy, be patient with yourself. We'll keep working on that, and maybe you might want to take me up on the self-image consultation. But because your mind works like a control mechanism oriented towards a target, that target is your self-image. That is your key goal image, and it controls your results. Not only does it control your results, but it also impacts how others see you. You might think people see you a certain way, but remember that self-image has so much power over you that you don't know any other way to act. So you might think people see you another way, but because you don't know any other way, people are going to see your self-image, your deepest beliefs coming through. Okay. And it absolutely influences your behavior. So last week, we don't have the time this week to go through that, but I went through some slides where I explained the relationship between your mind, your body, and your behavior and your results. And I do encourage you to go back and watch those again, because it's really important to understand that relationship. So let's go a little bit deeper then to understand how we now take this to the next level. How do we actually create that new self-image? Look at our current self-image, be aware of it, but what we want to do now is create that up-leveled self-image. And it's so important that you're doing this consciously, because your current self-image was created unconsciously. And there may be some stuff in your current self-image that just isn't serving you. And we're using the movie analogy. Okay, we'll go into a little bit deeper into understanding the movie analogy. And basically, you're responsible for your life. So using that movie analogy, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the financier, you're the scriptwriter, you're the researcher, and ultimately, you're going to step into character. You're going to step into the character of the up-leveled you. So we'll be talking about writing your self-image script as well. Our self-image prescribes the limits for the accomplishment of any particular goals. It prescribes the area of the possible. So we've got to do this. Okay, what we've got to do is expand the area of the possible for you. Because what happens with self-image is that it keeps you boxed in, because we don't know any other way, right? It kind of defines the area of the possible. So by becoming aware of the vision of what it is that you want for your life, you're already starting to expand that area of what is possible for you. And this means that you've got to start thinking and feeling and acting in new ways. You've got to start stepping into that future you and tying it into the vision, right? The vision that you created, that you're aware of, that you want for your life 3 years from now. So that was last week's exercise. You've got to start stepping into that future you now. And I love this image because I think it just makes it so clear. I hope that everybody resonates with this. The idea being that, you don't wait for your goals to happen. You've got to upgrade internally first. You've got to become the man or the woman who is already achieving your goals mentally, in imagination. Okay, it might not yet be happening in reality, but it starts first inside of you with up-leveling your self-image, zipping yourself into the future you who is already achieving the image. And just for all of you who are here, and I'd love to see a 1 if this is resonating with you, that as you think about yourself, the future you, like if you just take a moment and imagine the future you, imagine yourself, right, 3 years from now, do you feel a slight shift in your energy as you think about who you've got to become, who you've got to be to actually be living that future vision now? And I'd love to see some 1s if it resonates with you, if you're getting this. Ooh, I love that the 1s. Great. So glad, because this is the name of the game. This is what we're after, that you've got to become the person first. And what gives you the direction is your vision, the exercise that we had, from part 1, getting clear about what you want for your life 3 years from now, and then getting really granular about 12 months from now. What are the 1, 2 goals, personal and professional, that will move you in the direction of that vision. And this is key because you've got to have direction. We need direction in order to be able to have something to write the script about. You define your own life. Don't let other people write your script. So this is about you writing your script. So let's jump in now to your life as a movie, and how do we even get started with writing that script? I mean, where do we even start, right? I know for me, and going back to the so many ones where this was the first time you really heard about self-image, when I first did this work, it was the first time I ever looked at my life as a movie and wrote a script for my life, right? So how do you get started with your script? So it starts with a picture, right? And thinking in terms of your life as a movie. And I like to use this analogy because we all know what movies are like, right? We all have that very vivid experience of movies. So starting with a picture, and that picture is the vision of your life, that exercise, that first part of your assignment, the vision of your life. And then we've got to tap into imagination. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about imagination in a movie. And again, using that movie analogy, because, think about a movie that for most movies are full color. They're vivid. There's lots of detail. In fact, movies are so real that our subconscious mind picks it up as absolutely real. And for really good movies, especially when there's a strong emotional component, we get seduced right into the movie, right? We're experiencing that. So your life is a movie, going a little bit deeper. Your self-image, as I mentioned previously, was built unconsciously. Some of it you pick up genetically, most of it you pick up environmentally. And this is through interpretations and evaluations of your past experiences. Okay, so this includes your triumphs, your victories, but also your disappointments, your humiliations, your traumas, okay? All that stuff, the way you experience life, so to speak, you pick up unconsciously and you interpret it. You draw conclusions. You might not even have been aware that this was happening, but it has been happening over the course of your life. And because your subconscious mind is in control of 90%, over 90% of your behavior, you are running on autopilot, right? You're running on autopilot. And the reason this work is so important is because since so much of our behavior is unconscious anyway, we want to build new programming that's going to support us in achieving that beautiful vision of your life that you have. So we're using the same way that our self-image was built unconsciously to up-level your self-image and build it consciously. And we're going to be tapping into your higher faculties. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. And what happens is that you're going to tap into your higher faculties to create new experiences. Remember, your self-image was built upon by interpretations and evaluations of your past experiences, of things you picked up through your environment. But we're going to tap into your higher faculties to create new experiences. But get this. Those new experiences will start in your mind. Yes, they start in your mind. And remember what I said 2 weeks ago, that your subconscious mind only knows the present, and it can't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. That's just the way your mind works. Just like it's goal-oriented, it also has this built-in system that can't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. And I shared how athletes use that to their advantage by visualizing themselves succeeding in their sport. And we're going to tap into that same ability. So I want to talk now about your higher faculties. And I mentioned these briefly last week. So these are your higher faculties. And we could spend 2 weeks on nothing but each of these higher faculties. We have limited time here to talk about them, so I'm going to go through them very briefly, and then we're going to go into a little more depth on the ones that you really need to tap into for this work. So your higher faculties are built into you. The thing is that most of you are living from your sensory factors, from see, hear, touch, taste, smell, right? We pick up through our sensory factors information from our environment. But what happens with that is that we tend to be kind of victims of what's happening outside of us, right? We tend to be playthings of the outside world when we only live from our sensory factors. So these are your higher faculties. Your will is your capacity to focus and concentrate. Your imagination is your ability to see pictures in your mind. Your memory is your ability to store and remember information. Perception is point of view. And guess what? Point of view can be changed. Your intuition is your ability to pick up information through vibration, as well as your inner guidance system. And your reasoning faculty is your ability to think. And, just because you're thinking doesn't mean your thinking is constructive. Right? So reason is important faculty to learn in order to really be thinking constructively. The three faculties, you tap into all of them for any kind of personal growth, but the ones I really want you to zero in on for the self-image, for up-leveling your self-image, are your will, your imagination, and your memory. It is these three that are absolutely the most important. Will is vital because you've got to train your mind to focus, to be absolutely obsessed. Any of you who have read Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, which is a book that I absolutely love, one of the best-selling personal achievement books of all times. He says that your definite aim, what it is that you want in life needs to be like a burning obsession. So you make it a burning obsession by tapping into your will. Your will is your capacity to focus and concentrate. And for any of you who feel like, I don't have a well-developed will or imagination or memory, don't worry. It's a matter of building the muscles. They're inside of you, and you don't even have to pay anything extra to have them. They are already inside of you. The second one, and this is key, and you've already all been tapping into this by doing the vision exercise, is imagination. Okay, we're definitely tapping into imagination. And isn't it absolutely stupendous that we have these faculties, right? We have these faculties. We can think in pictures. And everything that we see created in our world started first in someone's imagination. Okay, and so the same for your future, the same for you achieving what it is that you want. It starts in your imagination. And then memory. Okay, memory, what we're doing here with the self-image script is we're actually creating a future memory. We think of memory as past. No, who says memory is only the past? Right? What we're doing here is creating a future memory. And I want to just take a minute and read a few passages right from Cybernetics, and you can see my book is a little beaten up. It's really falling apart. But I'm going to read a few passages, and I want you to really, really listen as I read, because this is the work that you have to do. And he says, many people find they get better results if they imagine themselves sitting before a large motion picture screen and imagine that they are seeing a motion picture of themselves. The important thing is to make these pictures as vivid and as detailed as possible. You want your mental pictures to approximate actual experience as much as possible. The way to do this is to pay attention to small details, sights, sounds, objects in your imagined environment. So really tap into that capacity that you have in imagination. Imagine how you would feel if you were already the sort of person you want to be. And this exercise builds new memories or stored data in your midbrain and central nervous system. It builds a new self-image. Okay, so it's the idea of seeing your life as a movie. And in your workbook on page 5, I've got some sections right from Psycho-Cybernetics, and I want to encourage you to read through that. It's some of what I just read is on page 5, but to really read through that carefully. So what I want to do now is jump into, as we wrap this up so that we can open it up for Q&A, to start to think about your self-image script, okay? So this is the part 2 assignment in your workbook. And for those of you where maybe this is still feeling a little bit fuzzy, like what exactly is a self-image script? I have an example of a script. It's on pages 9 to 11 in your workbook, and it goes pretty in depth, and it's a hypothetical example, and I made it kind of bold. And the reason I did that is because I want for all of you to be bold with your self-image, to be bold with the vision that you are setting with your life. Because what happens is that for so many people, especially once we get into adulthood and middle age, we start to play it safe. And I want you to really allow yourselves to dream about your vision, to follow the instructions, especially from last week that I gave about writing your vision and writing your goals, to really allow yourself to dream. Okay, so read the sample script just so you have an idea of what a real full script is like. Then I want you to go back and review your vision that you wrote up from the prior assignment, from part 1, and to start thinking about your vision as a movie, as the movie of your life in full color, vivid, with all the details, as Dr. Malt says. And then the next part of the exercise, and I've given you categories. There are different categories in your workbook. So for example, your family, your career, your philanthropy. I tried to give you different categories for the different areas of your life. Okay. And for you to start jotting down notes, for you to start making some notes for yourself of what it is that you want in those specific areas of your life. So that's the assignment for next week. Now, the most important thing is just get started. Do not worry about perfection. Okay. And in fact, you can see my hint here. Keep it simple. And I want to give you an additional hint. This is not in your workbook, so I'm simply relaying to you here, but I want you to take this note seriously. There are multiple categories that I've shared with you in the workbook. Just pick 3. Just pick 3 categories. So I think when I first started back on this over 8 years ago, I think I picked career and family and spirituality. Those were like my 3 categories, because to think of all the categories was just overwhelming. So keep it simple. We just want you to get started. For now, this is about progress, not perfection. And you want to look at your self-image script as a living document. As your awareness grows, you can add to it. But it's absolutely essential that you look at it as a living document. And next week, we'll talk about the practical application of it, because it's not going to help you either if you write something and then throw it into a bottom drawer or leave it in a file on your computer, but you never look at it. This has to be something that you actually actively use. So the example that I have in the workbook is very extensive, only because I want to give you that kind of full panoramic idea of a really in-depth self-image script. But to get started, keep it simple. Please, please, please keep it simple. Okay, so we're going to wrap up now. So for next week, read the movie of your life, which I think is on page 5. Do the part 2 assignment, which will have you also getting started on writing your self-image script. And then next week, I'll share with you finalizing your self-image script. And we'll talk also about even deeper into the movie analogy about the actor's technique and stepping into character, all as part of the actual practical application. So that this isn't just an intellectual idea, a 3-part masterclass that you did once back in March and April, that this is something that you really, really apply and use in your own life. So just to summarize for today, our 3 key takeaways before we open up for the Q&A. We did a quick review of what that self-image is, that inner self-image. We talked about your life as a movie, right? We're using that vision that you have for your life and just using the analogy of a movie and how important it is to tap into your higher faculties, your will, so that you hold those images in imagination, because we see in pictures, and I want you to see big and bold, beautiful pictures for yourself, and then memory, right? That what we're doing here is creating future memory, and that your success starts first in your mind, and it requires you to up-level that inner self-image. And then number 3 is getting started with your self-image script, and that's the exercise for next week. Keep it simple. Start with 3 key areas if looking at all the categories of your life is just a little too much. And I can totally relate it as it is. So just a quick reminder before we open up for Q&A, definitely please do connect with me on LinkedIn. And as Sky has shared my email as well, I've opened up 5 consultations, self-image consultation, to the first 5 people who want to take advantage of that. So Sky and Tien, I'm going to stop the share, and then I think we can address questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. What a great class. We'll start out with the first question that says, how much of your supporting cast in your life should you focus on, and what's your advice in grooming and growing your supporting cast?
Oh, that's a really, really great question. Yeah, so one of the important questions to ask yourself as part of this self-image process is to reflect also on the 5 people you spend the most time with. Okay. Now, for some of us, that includes family members, and maybe some of them don't buy into this, or maybe some of them are a little cantankerous or something like that, right? And that's fine. We can't change other people, even in our own families. But one thing that you will find is that as you change, right, as you learn to live more through that up-leveled self-image, you're also going to lift other people up. Okay. But the other reason that I ask you to reflect on the 5 people you spend the most time with is because you want to be sure also that you have people in your life who are already at that level that you want to be. And if you don't have those people in your life yet, you want to invite them in. You want to bring them in, right? Because those people are going to be thinking and acting and behaving the way you want to, and you're going to be also learning from them. Okay, that's going to push you and really push you to grow into that higher level. And I would say, in terms of writing your script, right, you want to be careful that like I said, you can't change other people, right? But write your life the way you want it to be. And what we're doing here is we're changing our subconscious mental programming, and we're letting go of how exactly that's going to happen, right? Instead, it's about how we want things to be. Great question.
Thank you, Stephanie. I know there's some people who are saying that they couldn't access the workbook on Zoom. So I just put my email in the chat. For anyone who wants to email me, I would be happy to get that over to you. So just send me an email saying you're looking for it, and I'll get that to you, no problem. I think there's a lot of chat questions about the workbook. I think that was the question we had in here. Does anyone have questions that they'd like to unmute and ask themselves, or they can private message it to me, or just ask it in the chat? We can leave it open now. The floor is open for you guys.
Yeah, before we go there, Sky, quick question. Can you, when you send your recap email, do you think you can attach the workbook, or is the file too big?
I can attach the workbook. I think everyone should be able to open it if I email it to them. So I'll definitely do that as well, just to make sure everyone has it.
Yeah, but if it's too big, we just want to make sure it gets through the spam filters and stuff. But
Yeah.
And we can try it.
Yeah, we'll try it for you guys.
Okay.
No worries. And someone's wondering where to find the part 1 recording. I will include that in this follow-up email as well. So I'll include the part 1 recording and this recording from today, and I'll include the link to register for part 3 to make sure you guys don't miss that.
Just to address the prior question about growing and grooming your supporting cast, okay? One of the things I found when I did the self-image work was that I lost some friends along the way. There were some friends who didn't like how I was growing, right? So this is this is not for the faint-hearted, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to dump family members, for example, right? But it also means that you're going to create you're going to show up as that up-leveled version. And in so doing, you, believe it or not, you lift others, because when you begin to behave differently, you're going to be a role model to others. Okay. Kavita, you've got a question?
Actually, Stephanie, I just wanted to confirm what you're saying, that you're absolutely right. You are going to lose friends along the way, but you have to remember that they're not your friends. in terms of, they were just in a sense, as you're climbing your mountain, you will find your future friends. And so you have to be okay with it. But at the same time, you can spend a little bit of time with them. And so just know that I think the phrase is, stupid is sticky. And so you have to be really, really careful who you hang around, because they can really get you in a mind spin to do whatever it is. Like, today is my 4-day of fasting and eating better, eventually eating better. And if you say that to people, they'll look at you like you have 2 heads or something. And so just know that even the simplest thing, the people that you're surrounded by right now is not going to get it, and you have to be okay with it. Thanks for letting me share, Stephanie.
Oh, of course. That's great insights, Kavita. Thank you so much.
And it looks like, Prashant, you have a question as well.
Yeah, Skala. Actually, just wanted to know that, as you said, that you can keep 5 people in the imagination, and you are also bringing their life up. So maybe one of that person or some of that person are not imagining their life in the positive way, the way we are imagining. So maybe in future we are seeing them with us in that positive way, but maybe they are themselves, if they themselves are not imagining their life in that way, so their future is not gonna be that high, right? So there's a conflict, right? So that's why I'm asking, like, how this works then that time.
Yeah, that's a great question, because what I really believe, and what I've learned from my mentors in this area is to hold all people in that highest image, to see the highest in them, even if they're not currently behaving that way. Okay. And it goes back to, and Prashant, I hope I'm answering your question correctly. Please do let me know if I'm not.
Yes. Okay.
What you've got to also remember, though, is that, we cannot force change on others, right? So you've got to stay in a kind of relaxed attitude about this, because what you don't want is to start getting into wars with people because they're not on board with what you're doing in personal growth. I mean, think about, for all of you, when somebody tries to fix you without your asking it, do you like that? Right? Like, nobody likes to be fixed. So the most important thing is that even if someone isn't behaving the way you want them to speak to them and to address the highest side of them, right? And like I was saying, and Kavita was referring to as well, if people don't change, and some people don't, some people for whatever reason can't or won't, right? That either you have to make the decision, okay, I'm moving on, or you have to just accept it and continue to live your life, but accept it, right? At the same time that you in imagination and in your heart hold the highest image for others as well.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
We have another question in the chat that says, what resources are available, such as blogs or newsletters, to keep these topics front and center of mind?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, because as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, the way to keep things front and center is that you have to keep studying this material, right? You have to keep studying. So, in today's world, we've got YouTube, we've got, so many great resources. Now there's a lot of junk out there too. I do have a up and coming YouTube channel. You're all welcome to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do some free trainings periodically. So any of you, I do actually once a month, I host a free training, and we almost always cover self-image. So I encourage you also to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me your email. And I'll be sure to add you to that information, and that's a great question. What you have to keep it front and center, right? You absolutely have to keep it front and center. One other idea is that, to partner up with like-minded individuals. I mean, some of you who know one another, like Tien and I are accountability partners, right? We connect regularly on personal growth stuff constantly. I'm learning from him, he's learning from me, right? Because we know that we have to keep each other thinking about this information, because the problem is we're not getting this in our news, we're not getting this in our everyday life. So you can also connect with one another. You could form study groups around reading Psycho-Cybernetics or Think and Grow Rich. But that's a great question, because I love that you are so committed to keeping this front and center for yourself. And
I'll make a comment. Oh, sorry. I wanted to just say, Steph, when we meet, Steph and I meet every Monday night, first Monday night of every month. And it is like religious. We've been doing it for over 2 years, and we have to get ready for these meetings. Like I'm accountable to Steph. I don't know if you're accountable to me or you feel that way, but I definitely, and we take detailed notes. I review all the notes from the prior several months. And then, we focus for 1.5 hours or so. And I think that's why it's like going to the gym or brushing your teeth. If you do it with some amount of regularity, it will stay. It's not top of mind like every second of every day, but it's really helpful. So if a couple of you guys may know each other, you can get a little accountability group together and kind of, meet up once a month or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tien, thank you for mentioning that, because you and I connect once a month. I have another group that is a mastermind group. We connect once a week, every Saturday, 9 a.m., going on 3 years. I've only missed one session. Tien, you and I have not missed a single month since we started our accountability.
No, I think we've delayed like 3 out of 20. In 2.5 years, I think we've delayed 3, but we've never missed one.
We've never missed one.
Yeah.
So the thing about having somebody to partner with, to link arms, is that accountability is like a success insurance policy, right? You will learn so much from one another, and you'll hold one another accountable.
What great advice. Thank you, Stephanie and Tien. Sue would like to know, what was the book that you mentioned that we should read in our last session?
Oh, Psycho-Cybernetics?
Yes.
Yep.
I see a nod. Yes, that was it.
Yep.
Perfect.
And like I said, this is my beaten up copy, because I've read this book so many times. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And this was one of the pioneering books on self-image, science of self-image and psychology.
Perfect. Thank you. And Laura had a nice comment for everyone, but her question is, how can we reshape this self-image without shocking the system? Is there a way to do it gradually?
Oh, that's a really, really good point. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because if we shock the system too much, the subconscious mind won't believe it, right? And then if it doesn't believe it, you could find yourself really resisting it or going back into old behaviors or pulling the bed sheets over you and not getting out of bed. I mean, you'd be amazed. I've seen all kinds of things, both in myself and working with so many clients over the years. So I would say that what you've got to do, because everybody's in a different place, everyone's got different paradigms. Right? So I would say that just gauge yourself. Like as you think about your vision, if you feel like your heart is really into it, okay, then I would say keep working with it. But if there's a big part of you that just doesn't believe it at all, right? What you might want to do is not focus on 3 years, but maybe bring it in a little closer to 3 years, something that you can wrap yourself around a little more closely. But I still want to encourage you to stretch yourself, right? To stretch yourself. And just also know that fear is going to be a normal part of this process, because anytime we step out of our comfort zone and writing a vision for your life that's big and bold and meaningful is stepping out of your comfort zone. Right? And then when you actually start thinking about actually doing it, it could terrify you. When I first started working on this stuff, I mean, I started to have panic attacks sometime. And that was my paradigm. It was my paradigm acting up. And your paradigm wants to keep you stuck. So just know that that's an illusion that's created by your paradigm. But because anxiety and panic are so damn uncomfortable, right? It's not fun to experience that, but just know that it's part of the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. The next question is, any tips for checking to see if the self-image script is influencing your paradigms and checking your mindset as you continue to read it out loud? If you keep reading it out loud but don't feel the results, what do you suggest?
Would you mind reading that to me again?
Yeah, no problem. So I'll read the first part. It says, any tips for checking to see if the self-image script is influencing your paradigms and changing your mindset as you continue to read it out loud? That's the first part. Yeah.
Well, I would say that what should start to happen is that you'll feel a switch in yourself energetically. That's why I was asking for those of you who, we're tapping into imagination to start to imagine yourself in your future vision. You should just feel a little bit of an energetic lift in yourself. Okay. But the second part of this, and we'll be talking more about this next week, is that you're going to want to start taking actions that are aligned with those goals and the vision, okay? And that are coming from that future you. And so taking those actions is key. It's absolutely key. This is not just a mental process. Doing the mental part of this is not enough. That's just going to keep you in a fantasy. You've got to take actions out in the real world. And what I would say is just very objectively, very lovingly, non-judgmentally, just gauge your actions, right? Are you taking actions, or are you maybe a little bit scared to take actions, right? And that's going to allow you to see what's going on with your self-image script. And I will emphasize that for most people, this is not an overnight thing. I have seen a handful of cases where it has been just these astronomical improvements. So it is possible. That was not my journey. My journey has been that it's been a steady process where I've kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and the change has been gradual. So you must keep at it.
Okay, great. We have 2 more questions in the chat that I'll ask, and then I want to respect everyone's time as well. So we'll start with these 2 questions, and then we can end the meeting. But if you'd like to stay on, feel free, and we can answer any last questions. Okay, it says, would your methods be applicable for both organic evolution and drastic transformative change?
Yes. So, there are 2 ways that we change. Okay. One is through an emotional shock. So you all heard my story 2 weeks ago where I mentioned, my kids ended up separated. I was in these custody issues. That was an emotional shock. I was in so much emotional pain that I hit rock bottom, and that was a wake-up call for me. Okay. So that's one way that we can move towards transformation. I would say that's not the desirable way. It's really painful, right? So what I want for all of you is that you're doing this consciously. Okay. You're making the conscious decision to change. And that is then through using these principles that I'm teaching here, where you are consciously planting these new ideas into your subconscious mind through repetition. Okay, through repetition, I guess is what you could call it. Repetition, study, keeping up day after day after day, impressing these ideas into your subconscious mind and taking action. So I hope that addresses that.
Yeah, definitely does. Okay, last question. How important is the place of self-affirmation in this self-image equation?
Very important. And actually, when I start working with my clients, usually in the first 2 weeks, what we're doing on is reframing their thinking about themselves. And this may sound really woo-woo, but it's like learning to love yourself. You've got to love yourself. So that self-affirmation, right? And maybe some of you can relate to this. People are so hard on themselves. You probably talk to yourself in ways that you wouldn't talk to anybody, right? Because we are so judgmental and so hard on yourself. So that first bit, and I love that this question came up, the self-affirmation is to eliminate all judgment, all self-criticism. What Maxwell Maltz teaches us, just like the airplane course corrects through negative feedback, mistakes, how we experience the outside world is just feedback, right? It's feedback to allow us to course correct. So always looking at yourself lovingly and objectively. Okay, so that self-affirmation is absolutely vital. Great, great question.
Great. We do have just one last question. This can be the very last one that's in the chat. What is an example of taking an action?
What is an example of taking an action? Okay, so let me just give you an example from my own life, okay? So one of my, part of my vision is that I'm becoming a thought leader, okay? So that means that some of my actions are aligned with that longer term goal, okay? So for example, just reaching out to Tien to talk about, could I possibly do a masterclass for your community, is an action I took to move myself in the direction of being a thought leader, okay? Because it means I have to show up prepared to teach this information around which I have expertise, okay? What I would recommend with your actions is that you have daily actions, and I actually have 6 daily actions. Every evening, I write out 6 daily actions I'm going to take the next day, and they are very specific. It's not like, become a thought leader on LinkedIn. That is so enormous that my subconscious mind can't wrap itself around that. But if I say, reach out to Tien and Sky about next masterclass, right? I can that's a real actionable step that I can take tomorrow. It's very, very specific. Okay, so be specific when you write out your actions, and they should be aligned with your goals. And if you're not doing something like this every day, the likelihood that your days are consumed by trivia is much higher. Right? So being really intentional about your days and making sure that you're moving in the direction of the person you want to be. So you're coming from making the decisions like the future you makes and being aligned with your goals and your vision.
What great ideas. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you.
Great question.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for this wonderful class. I know I found it very informative, and I know a lot of people just based off the chat got a lot out of it. So we want to thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone at part 3 next Friday, which you'll get the link to register for that on Monday, along with the follow-up from this class. But with that, we can end today's session and thank everyone for being here.